Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, here to HGC North America, where we are still in the series here between Simplicity up against Gale Esports, and it is tied up 1-1. Very back and forth in both games, really, for that matter. Fan, who do you think is going to really be able to kind of set the tone going forward, or do you expect maybe a shift in kind of mentality for either side?
I mean, to me, the interesting thing about this series is I feel like Simplicity has been playing better inside the game, whereas GFE has had better drafting. So, you know, depending on which one matters more, either team could still win.
Yeah, and it suddenly raises that kind of question of, like, will we see Simplicity identify that, maybe mix it up in the draft? Because I would argue if I could choose one of those two problems, if I'm in the middle of the series, I definitely take I'm better in the game because I can adjust my my draft on the fly, whereas I can't adjust my play so much on the fly. So it's going to be interesting to see if we see any mix-up. Any thoughts from you, Jay?
Hanzo's won both games so far. This is another battleground that if you want to go a Hanzo Tassadar style, maybe Hanzo Tassadar Uther, which we've seen in the past, but also...
You just had a slip. You just gave away our battleground, which we're going to go ahead.
I didn't say that.
We're going to bring it up, but...
I don't remember saying that.
Anyways, Tomb of the Spider Queen is the battleground. Anyways,
no
proceed.
video evidence at all.
Tassadar Hanzo is good on what battleground, J-Hal?
All battlegrounds. Dread, even Infernal Shrines, Battlefield of Eternity, and most importantly, Tomb of the Spider Queen. But the other thing is that we got to consider now, I think this is an opportunity for the likes of Fury and King Caffeine to shine, because if we're getting Garrosh Diablo in any form or fashion, I think this is it.
Yeah, absolutely. Those two tanks are just massive on this map, and a lot of it is about who can control vision, who can get more of those kills, if neither of them end up picking the Johanna, of course.
The Johanna, the one that, the legendary Johanna that we've had a reasonable amount of discussion. I'm still comfortable with
this battleground.
It's the one battleground I'm okay with.
This is the
it.
one.
Not the only one. Dragonshire's got a couple of moments, and I would say in other maps in certain situations, but definitely this is the most forgiving battleground.
Yes, this is the only forgiving one. I agree with you. So again, the Hanzo is curious to me, but when we look at Gale Force, they love Jaina. They love Gul'dan on this battleground, things like that. The Phoenix, and I started to think about this a little bit more, the Phoenix that we've seen, kind of that double squishy backline. Phoenix, if you want to come in and you want to get real damage, you have to put that laser out, and it compromises your positioning the same way that if you want to land the big cone, if you're Jaina, it compromises your positioning. And that's why I think that if we're going to see a change up for Gale Force, this battleground, you need to show me something different. If you want to go Jaina Greymane, which you've done successfully in the past, I'm all for that. But Jaina, Gul'dan, I'm really curious to see what route they'll go.
I agree. Somewhere that damage dealer, if it is that auto attack dealer, it can't be the kind of squishy weak one. It's got to be somebody with very assertive, able to siege up and make sure it gets the execution and the damage, and not that kind of double wave clear passive playstyle that we see from Gale Force Esports, or we have kind of seen from them. And that in mind, though, I still want to paint the fact that I feel like even in game number 1, when we did get that from them, it was still a better performance than we typically got from them in the normal season.
100% agree with you there. I mean, again, fans said, I mean, we've seen very good drafts, I think, from both teams in both games so far. Obviously, I think that Simplicity was a little bit too one-dimensional last game, and they just weren't able to get in there. The Cassia pick, obviously, was brilliant, I think, on the side of Gale Force, the ultimate counter there towards that style. So, obviously, I don't know if I don't think we see a lot of Cassie on this battleground. I know a hero that a fan likes on this battleground is a Tracer, which we haven't seen from these teams lately. Fan, I'm always curious because there's certain and very few teams that are able to run the Tracer on this battleground. You do it probably more than anybody, dating back to even the Gale Force days. What's the comfort level on Tracer nowadays on Tomb?
I mean, I think it really just depends on the player. If you have a player who is really good at Tracer, then Tracer on Tomb is a very good pick most of the time. It depends on the other team's draft, of course, but just the fact that you can harass them the entire time, the lanes are narrow, and you can kind of poke at them while they're trying to rotate in between lanes. That's what makes Tracer so strong on Tomb.
Tracer said you have to have a good Tracer player coming from the one that plays it probably more than anybody on this battleground.
Honestly, Europe has the best Tracer players hands down. Dignitas probably has the best Tracer players hands down.
Ooh.
We're just copying them.
Wait, what about Schwempy?
Schwempy as well. Well, I mean, I said Europe first.
And then you specified 2 on one team. Schwempy, if he's watching.
Xaylia used to play.
Yeah, Xaylia, that's how he made his name. Xaylia literally came into the competitive scene. I still remember Cursed Hollow bust out a Tracer. It was Valencia, summer of 2016, bust out this. Who was like, who is this guy? And Calaris is hitting us with like, yeah, believe it or not, like he's actually known in the Hero League scene as like the Tracer player, right? He just busts onto the competitive scene, just starts wrecking people. He wasn't on the greatest of teams at the time, but obviously a very talented player who made a name for himself in a big way back then.
We had a couple, Tracer players even on some of the rosters here. Big Impact was a player who made his name on Tracer in the past. But actually, we got some kind of cross comparisons here from Big Impact, and not a Tracer player, but kind of the rival on the other side of the battleground here, as it is Hosty. And immediately, what are some of the thoughts that stand out here when you look at these numbers, Fan?
I mean, as far as hero damage and siege damage goes, they're remarkably similar. The only difference is that Hosty has, the slightly better KDA. Interestingly enough, he actually has less takedowns. So, I mean, Hosty's just a safer player, but Big E gets more aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Hosty, he's #2 in North America in damage per game, that average hero damage, which puts him in the top 10 in the world. So he's very effective, doesn't have a lot of those killing blows that we generally see, but definitely contributes a lot to this team. Obviously, the takedowns definitely go over the Big E's side. We see him very aggressive sometimes on Liming and Genji, which is why his deaths are a little bit higher. But I think both these players are key components to when your team is setting up the fight and they're able to finish the fight. It kind of revolves around that. Again, kind of honing in the Zuna style right now is just trying to find a way to, look, we can capitalize on these two players. And you look at Big E, and the other thing is Michael Udall on that backside, you could just as easily swap Big E and Michael Udall there. That could almost be the cross comparison because they're almost identical. They're both in the top 10 in kills per game here in North America. They're both very effective. The backline of Gale Force is very, very strong. We were obviously taking a look at just those, but you look on the other side, Hosty, just such an outstanding player on that Simplicity roster.
And I feel like that there's something to be said there for, Hosty and some of those numbers, especially that KDA and the fact that his team has, more negative results. Granted, it's not like Gale Force is far and above results compared to Simplicity, but it hasn't been till as of late that we've looked at Simplicity and been like, they're a competitive roster compared to the rest of North America. So to statistically hold your own in the realm of KDA while you're on a struggling roster really shows that you're doing something right for the team.
See how this goes. Just Michael Udall 8th in North America, Big E 6th in North America. But we'll see how that goes. Now with Simplicity, they don't like to play Maiev. They're not even willing to try and dance around that prospect, and we'll see if they can get a Medivh, which is unlikely.
Yeah, and with both of those banned out, I think Garrosh becomes the next priority, and I have a feeling that both teams are going to kind of default back to their comfort damage dealers. Just have a feeling we're going to see Gale Force pick up the tried and true Jaina. Very good on this map with the wave clear. It's also good into the Garrosh. And there it is. And then Hanzo is going to come out for Simplicity. So they're both on their comforts once again.
I actually was really enjoying this PowerPoint, and I really wanted you to just solo draft. Like, this is what they're going to pick. Follow up immediately after. Be like, here comes the bans. Just locking it down. You were nailing it. I mean, Garrosh priority. Here comes the Jaina. I mean, sadly, the momentum stopped with the Hanzo on the side of Simplicity, but that was crisp and clean there, Fan.
The Hanzo, I definitely want that. If you watch the likes of somebody like Crone, the positioning on this, you can learn a few things in terms of the way that you can get away with things to poke around. And if Garrosh is kind of that frontline warrior, Garrosh is that guy that, look, if you're standing in the middle and you want to come in, you want to be aggressive towards the likes of a Hanzo that's sitting around that turn and disrupting rotations or coming up and picking those gems, Garrosh will just stand there all day and be like, bring it on. I'll just toss you back. And that's one of the things that I think the Garrosh Hanzo pick on this battleground could be something very strong for them to consider.
Yeah, and I've been watching Crone play some Hanzo myself because I think he's probably one of the best North American Hanzos in the league. And every time I watch him, I'm just sitting there in TeamSpeak with my team. I'm like, hey guys, look at Crone. Poke, poke, poke. Because he's just constantly auto-attacking. He doesn't care what your front line is. He does not miss an auto. He'll just keep poking, keep poking, keep poking. And he has like 3 or 4 times the damage of like everyone else on the other team. And that's how they win a lot of their Hanzo games.
I know we're on the Gale Force ban, but we've talked about the Johanna.
Yeah.
Are you willing to concede banning a Diablo to give up the Johanna? Do you even entertain that idea? Like, where do you see that right now in this battleground when you look across? You've got a Garrosh, you've got a Stukov. Obviously, the lurking arm and a toss, Johanna very appealing. But do you try and play around that? Is that even in consideration if you're on Simplicity side?
I think the Johanna ban is a possible ban just because every other tank is easy to kill if you have a Garrosh and a Stukov. Don't think they'll be banning the Diablo, but Johanna ban is very possible.
Not wanting to deal with the Tassadar Hanzo here for Gale Force Esports. They end up committing the ban. And as we've talked about, whether or not the Johanna wants to kind of come to light, whether or not it's worth the resource. We do not see any focus on that. Another topic that we haven't talked about at all or even seen commitment towards in this draft whatsoever is going to be who is in that off lane. We've seen a lot of Blaze from really kind of both sides of the battlefield here. I do feel like if Gale Force ends up getting that for themselves, Gale Force, whenever they get those pause buttons in the team fight, I look at that and I go, that's going to really be able to help them whenever they can fight. Because I personally feel like Simplicity has shown they are extremely good at skirmishing as long as compositionally they can hold their own and they're on the even talent tier. So anytime you can have those, again, because I mean, that's what we saw in the last game, right? Sanctification, Bunker, plus the Malfurion, which is way too good to deal with. Granted, that came with a very clever Cassia pick.
I really wonder, you know, we've seen a lot of Blaze to Haka, you definitely have to consider. Sonya's kind of there, but I wonder if this is an opportunity, maybe if Gale Force, they want to bust out that Mouth Hill, bring that back a little bit. Obviously, can't get off a lot of abilities into a lurking arm, but dealing with that Garrosh, we've seen a lot of teams, they feared that for the longest times. We've seen less bans on Mouth Hill, but if you're looking to come out with that big surprise, then we'll see if it happens. And the old Tracer ban here.
Yeah, shows that they are worried a little bit about their Hanzo. Once again, Stukov not the best protection. Might indicate that they are not planning on drafting any additional protection for the Hanzo as well. We'll have to see.
I feel like especially with that Tassadar ban out, right? Like, because that would be the other kind of placeholder in that time frame. Be like, okay, we got Tass Hanzo. That can make up for the weaknesses within the Stukov. So whenever they see that ban, I feel like that makes that Tracer even that much more kind of incentivized on the side of Simplicity, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Tass Hanzo, Medivh Hanzo, those are probably two of the more common ones. So at this point, if you want to draft another protect, it's going to be like Blaze or something.
We see Gale Force still committing to the all-in here, gank kind of initiation to make sure they get the kills onto that Hanzo. With the Tassadar banned out, it's just showing they very much kind of want to commit to that once again. We got this, I believe it was in game number 1 from them, where they got the ban, committed towards this, you know, do we want to get the all-in, and the rest of the picks very much kind of catered to that. Actually, excuse me, that was Simplicity in the last game. So
this is almost identical to their game 1 draft outside of a Blaze, which now if I'm on the side of Simplicity, Blaze looks a lot more appealing to give you that, you know, backup like, hey, you know, we got somebody in our backline trying to kill us.
But one big difference between this draft and draft number 1 was the Cocoon dealing with, right? We got Tracer already banned out. That's not an option. Tassadar's been taken off the table. That was the last pick response to deal with the Anubarak. So who's going to be the target? Who can kind of rid of this Cocoon? Do you pick a Tychus in this situation? You know, that like last game we saw that come out. If you're willing to commit to that much in the auto attack department, we saw that kind of bamboozle with the Cassia. Granted, Cassia in this composition is a little bit less likely, but I'm just saying that, you know, Simplicity has to be careful because Gale Force has been shown to kind of bait one pick and then counter it with another.
Ooh. I don't know how I feel about the Phoenix pick here. The Tychus, I feel, gives you a lot of frontline control, does similarly to dealing with the Anubarak the same way any auto attack hero would do. Relentless Soldier at level 7 in case they want to dive you. Neo Steel to deal with any potential Jaina late game. You have significant amount of wave clear with that Odin. Instead, they're going kind of that new school with Phoenix here.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I feel like both of those picks are about the same to me because both of them are very tanky, hard to kill, and both of them have about the same level of wave clear for Tomb. I think Blaze will be the key when it comes to protecting against the Cocoon at this point. He has Bunker, and also his WQ is rapid damage, so it deals with Cocoon very quickly as well.
Just the positioning of Phoenix, right? Again, I talked about you compromise your position. If you want to go in and you want to be aggressive, most of your damage is probably going to come from that laser going out. You can get auto attacks, good splash, good single target, depending on which auto attack you're using. But if you want to be aggressive, and normally I'm like, all right, I'm fine with that. But again, Zuna, we've seen him on Phoenix before. It was respectable, right? It wasn't aggressive. But I feel that if you want to get aggressive, Zuna very likely will be like, look, I'm going in. And now all of a sudden you've got an Anubarak, a Jaina, some roots. So the position of Phoenix, to me, is a good pick, good wave clear, very aggressive at times, but I think it's got to be a cautious aggression.
I think both backliners have that, right? And it's just the tendency of play that we've gotten from Zuna in the past that goes, okay, especially Zuna, you know, seeing onto that, you know, Phoenix needs to make sure that he ends up playing it safe. It's going to be interesting. I feel like this composition is very difficult to execute on the side of Gale Force Esports. And normally when we think of Gale Force on Tomb, it's macro, and they're not catering to that. They need to get these kills, need to get the initiations, and it's whether or not Simplicity's backline can manage to survive it. We've got game 3 here on Tomb of the Spider Queen. Again, between Gale Force Esports and Simplicity. Let's get right to it.
And this is where it's at for Gale Force. We know they like this battleground. Played it quite a bit. It's, we'll get things kicked off here. Obviously, again, that off lane, you know, we considered it is going to be the Thrall that we got there on the side of Gale Force. It's going to be V-Kid. But, you know, again, we look at options. Garrosh, he definitely disrupts the tank meta quite a bit as King Caffeine on the Garrosh. You need that hero like a Johanna that has the Iron Skin, the ability to walk away, a Tyrael, the ability to Eldruin's away, an Uberak. Again, if you go in with your burrow charge, you don't have your burrow charge out. You can use it if you do get tossed in. So Fury's play also going to be something to note here as Garrosh staying on the other side. Gonna be making it difficult.
One thing I do enjoy about the composition here for Simplicity is the fact that into the Anubarak, they do have double auto attack damage dealers. Granted, you know, I feel like Hanzo and Phoenix are unfair to call total auto attacks because obviously Hanzo, especially moving a Scatter Arrow build in this game, so it's going to be less into the Redemption, far less auto attack focus. But just, you know, the fact that you can get that kind of adjustment into the Anubarak, and you make sure that he's going to be a lot more volatile there, not being able to rely on his spell armor. And then more importantly, when we have these two together, because they're both hybrids of like half autos, half mages, I think they both struggle with kill potential individually. They're amazing in the world of poke. They're very much at, you know, kind of peppering in as we talked about. They get that damage in that manner, but they aren't good at executing. Luckily with this composition, Garrosh, one of the best of his realm to be able to get kills and set the team up for kills. And I think Stukov is one of the best in the support area as well to make up for that. So I feel like a lot of this has been pretty calculated and controlled for the draft on the side of Simplicity, even though we've been praising Gale Force, you know, for their drafting so far.
So a lot of team effort from Simplicity is going to be required is what you're saying.
Yeah, a lot of team effort here.
We'll see how it goes. You know, we're going to get the early rotations here. We have two Globe talents on the side of Jaina and Anubarak there on Gale Force. Obviously, Anubarak, much easier to complete this. Get that bonus after you get 30 of those. Going to make it a little bit easier. And Jaina obviously getting that bonus damage once she completes, picking up that up. A lot easier. Far less globes than the Anubarak.
Laning phase so far has been pretty interesting. Not the standard 1-4, as Genji has been kind of catering towards rotations on the bottom half of the map, and this is understandable considering, you know, Blaze has got pretty good wave clear, and more importantly, Genji can really only kind of cater towards kill potential within the 4, or again, tending towards that off lane. For now, though, it's just going to be Simplicity, keeping the tempo within the 4 as best as they possibly can. But Genji did end up starting the Giants, and because Jaina got an advantage on the clear on mid, this is going to be a pretty big window where Simplicity is going to be on the back foot. Can Priz sniff it out? He will in time.
He's going to get there, but I think the threat, obviously, of a Thrall there, although Biggie conceding for now. We're going to have everybody rotating down. Yeah, Phoenix got a little bit of a head start over the Jaina, and again, King Caffeine on that Garrosh does so well to control the areas. It's just way too hard to walk into the Garrosh at that point. So, by the way, King Caffeine repping an old school Cloud9 mount from his days back on a championship team.
You know, it's got to feel good knowing that you earned that mount there for King Caffeine. John's going to be catered towards, though, and a little bit of light protection here. Simplicity kind of hovering around. Not going to get a lot of damage, though. 18 to 17 when looking towards the gems. Near identical when it comes to turned in and how many sit in the possession for both teams. It's really just going to be who can, it feels like, eke ahead when it comes to the laning. For now, I feel like Gale Force did have the upper hand other than the invade around that Giants, but great kind of awareness here from Simplicity. And we heard, you know, them talk about Prismat and the impact that's had on a macro play. Though that isn't a macro decision, I do feel like that very much shows like the game sense, right? He wasn't in that lane for 30 seconds before that time frame being like, okay, I saw Genji, he's disappeared, he's not anywhere else, he's got to be on this, and then calling that out for the rotation from the team.
Beacon there on the inside is King Caffeine. He's going to eat the root. Prismat going to take a bit of damage, but obviously K1 Pro throwing over some heals there to kind of support everybody. The rest of Simplicity kind of rotating down to make sure and poke along. Zuna, I think, is actually trying to trade with the Jaina up top. And again, that is Zuna.
That's not trying. That's
he was
trading.
doing it.
That's trading up hard right there. Not even touching his HP, only the shields. This is something we did see a little bit out of the European region, is actually Phoenix being more towards that off lane than rather being committed to the 4. Granted, this is not a standard off lane, you know, Zuna, he's just kind of the placeholder in the top lane in a 1-3-1. But it is very much the ability to trade 1 versus 1 because of that HP regen onto the shielding itself is so much faster than every other hero's HP regen. Just get a couple of trades, and especially against a squishy like Jaina, you can really find some profit there.
Almost profiting. Oh, there's a double root there, and he did go the Vengeful Roots. There's going to be the CC follow-up. Zuna does manage to get the warp out, so just barely staying alive there. But Vengeful Roots, obviously the pickup there for Akaface, getting his first 2 stacks there. But level 7's now picked up here by both teams.
attempt of a turn-in there on the top half for Gale Force actually is going to be successful. Fury able to drop off some of those gems here. First Web Weaver phase of the game. Going to be going over to Gale Force Esports. Quite a bit of siege potential from them. But the biggest thing is they've got to initiate. Jaina, she's decent. We talk about it. You've got one option or the other, but she is a majority of their siege damage. Thrall is pretty good whenever you can get into the range, which again is kind of against a Garrosh going to be unreliable. So Gale Force Esports, once you get those gates down, I want to see them clump up and just initiate at least a 4-man kind of half commitment to a skirmish around this first Web Weaver phase.
Lurking arm by K1 Pro. Michael Yuta got to be careful there. Instead, the Fury is going to get tossed out. Roots are going to land down. King Caffeine going to eat a bit of damage. Looks like they should have the clear here on the mid lane. You know, I got to take notice of this because it's not every day we get this level 7 talent from the Phoenix. It's something that a lot of pro players have shied away from so far, but Zuna, he's going in, Dreadwin. He likes to be aggressive. He wants to get that single target kill. Going in for the warfare, the warp warfare, though. And that gives you that extra attack speed, that 125% attack speed for 4 seconds. So if you can get that single target focus in like he had with Michael Udall earlier, might have an opportunity for a kill. So definitely changing things up here a little bit in his build.
And it is also kind of what I was talking about a little bit before when looking at the double hybrid of both can be auto attackers, but both can be mage oriented, and more importantly, into an Anubarak. Having that amount of single target auto attack speed to blow up in a Anubarak is going to be far higher kill potential onto him. Suddenly now Fury, after every burrow charge, is going to be threatened that much more. Granted, it's got to be after the warp, so Zuna has to burn some cooldowns himself.
He's going to pair it with that 16, battle momentum that he's got. He's going to go Planet Cracker. I don't know if we'll see Planet Cracker.
Wow,
but
nice
it definitely helps.
arm.
Yeah, that's all of a sudden. That's going to be a dead Thrall there. Now they're looking for more. As we're seeing Fury, he's eating quite a bit of damage. 10 was picked up, so Tranquility's out. They're trying to turn this fight as the Water Elemental's coming out, putting the damage. There's going to be the warp out by Zuna, but on the front line, King Caffeine, he's under a lot of pressure.
Yeah, but it's King Caffeine. He's the only person who can kind of survive that situation. I can't help but feel like I don't know if it would have netted Gale Force a kill, but anybody but the Garrosh to focus in that type of situation. For instance, when the Cocoon revealed, granted, Blaze has a gap closer on the jet propulsion. Jaina was not the target you want to get the body block in that type of situation, but he was on an island completely by himself. Well, he had the option to turn and get that auto. They end up banking on trying to get the kill on the Garrosh. One nice heal, not only from his W, but also the healing out from K1 Pro, and he is just fine. Gale Force still far in control of this game, but definitely a window of opportunity, maybe a bit missed there.
You can see Thrall holding his heroic. We've seen a lot of Earthquake to maybe counter some of what's going on, but we'll also see if we might get the Sundering coming out here. Obviously, you see Salvo. Salvo, if you can get the interrupt, obviously that can help quite a bit. See if that does come into play, though. Thrall still continuing to hold that. See if he makes the big play with the Sunder, or maybe a little bit of area control with the Earthquake.
Jaina has shown herself on the bottom half of the map with that Giant being started already. Easy clear for Simplicity in the mid lane because of that information given up. Question is, who wants to make the rotation down to be able to deal with those Giants to make sure that Web Weaver actually gains a bit of value? For now, it's just Prismat. A 1-3-1 split. We saw the 1-3-1 split on the side of Gale Force. Joe, it's not the same when Simplicity runs a 1-3-1. Simplicity gets far more out of 1-3-1, not only because their 3-man has higher kill potential, but because their side lanes far better at getting that split siege out. Genji into Blaze. Blaze wins that all day. Top lane, no one is even there on the side of Gale Force Esports, purely because of that siege potential. And then Simplicity now clumping it up here into the middle.
You get the wall down. You saw the Lurking Arm did very well at zoning, but Blizzard starting to be dropped down on that Web Weaver does a significant amount of damage. Will force the rotation of Simplicity up, potentially up to that top lane, but Simplicity kind of holding their ground.
They don't have to do anything. Bottom lane is winning so hard and top because nobody committed on the side of Gale Force Esports. Gale Force had to commit one person towards top, but now because they didn't do that and bottom is such a heavy laning mismatch, this is, again, purely compositionally as to why Simplicity is able to pull ahead. I mean, there was a little bit to be done by Gale Force, but very much well done here by Simplicity. Gains them a lot onto the front walls. I would have liked to see a little bit more aggression with that top Web Weaver, but they, it's still pretty solid structure advantage considering first Web Weaver phase.
Prismat hanging out. We'll see if they can get any type of setup. Biggie, there's a little bit of game sense awareness.
On top, though.
Yeah, if they can get the turn in, again, both teams with enough for turn in, only 6 needed for Gale Force. Looks like Hosty's got his hands full while the remaining members of Simplicity are going to be here.
Not so full anymore.
That's one way to make sure you can get the turn in.
Wow, but they burnt Welly for that as well. That's a double heroic use.
They got the interrupt.
And they got the interrupt. Oh my goodness. Simplicity here now should just look for an initiation pre-13. They might want to wait out the 13s, but if they do, that's, you know, tread lightly as you're so far behind in experience that I don't know if you can make up for that window of kind of the heroic still being on cooldown.
Right now, Simplicity, they're still trying to zone. It's only 6, while Simplicity, they don't
Dragon
have
Arrow.
Dragon Arrow. That's going to be a Nature's Cure going out there, a little bit of cleanse, but Anubrak was finally able to get that turn in up top. Simplicity was able to make up a little bit of ground in the experience, so 13 versus 13 coming up. Another defense here for Simplicity, but that was a lot used there for Gale Force. Luckily, short enough cooldowns on both of those.
I was going to say, they're short enough cooldowns and the Web Weavers take long enough to descend that it really is going to matter. That's why I was saying Simplicity, if you have a fight, it's right now. You have to force it before the objective. Otherwise, it's pretty easy to kind of skirt around the map and kind of cut it out until you make sure you get those 100%.
Skirt around?
Skirt, yeah, you just got to skirt around the map.
If it's 2 people, do you skirt, 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 skirt? All right, Simplicity here. Lurking Arm's going to go down. K1 Pro with that level 7. Going to be nice and safe there. It's going to be hard for them to engage, but he does have to be careful of the old purple stuff. The Web Weaver will shoot out there. Does do a pretty decent amount of damage. He's going to be clipped by it. You can see taking about 10-15% of his health. He's going to heal right back up. But now, only Web Weaver remaining. Dreadnought, I don't know if we're seeing this correctly, but it looks like only 1/4 is going to go down here.
3 Web Weaver phases deep. Oh my goodness! Top isn't end up going down, but again, as you said, that's the only one. That's the only fort to end up dropping. I would say, I personally blame Simplicity on that stat, right? As why only one structure fell. That top fort was theirs to be able to take during the second Web Weaver phase out of the 2. The first one was a laning kind of mismatch and compositional flaws on the side of Gale Force. That last one was definitely their moment to make a play, get an initiation, and they've been unable to do so. So now, kind of back into the hands of Simplicity, but turn-ins for Simplicity are far greater and far better than that of Gale Force Esports. So it's going to be interesting. Can Gale Force get the successful fight past the Web Weaver phase whenever we see Simplicity turn these in? That in mind, Gale Force dumped off 46 gems for themselves. This is actually a very convenient situation to be in because now they're not afraid to fight. Even if Simplicity takes that, you suicide, dive past, Web Weaver phase clears, and you just go, we lost nothing, even if we lost the fight itself.
Prismat holding on to more than half of the gems here for Simplicity, and that is kind of the key point. But Prismat, he's getting aggressive. Water Elemental out again. There's Zuna being aggressive as well as he moves forward on the Phoenix, trying to put some damage onto that Water Elemental, at least momentarily. Prismat, he's looking for a channel. King Caffeine trying to hold position, and Prismat does confirm the turn-in.
Web Weaver's looking to descend, but Prismat, he wants a jet propulsion here in the mid lane as he found himself a Mike Udall. He's going to land it. Salvo drops. Ice Block not available, and Mike Udall is going to drop here. Bunker is going to get the follow-up. His first kill for Simplicity. And it looks like it's going to be enough after the Cocoon bought a bit of time. How much can they make happen with these Web Weavers? I saw the entirety of this game. Web Weavers are better for Simplicity than they are for Gale Force. It gets significantly better when your only wave clear is dead during the Web Weaver phase. That Jaina being down is a huge setback for Gale Force Esports.
I mean, the whole thing with Simplicity, by the end of this, they should have around enough for another turn-in or at least nearby. They'll also be cresting 16 here momentarily, so they can be aggressive, open up the map. And when you have the lane so far pushed out, but Zuna, well, that just changed the whole narrative as Zuna's going to go down here, and that's going to be the Web Weavers neutralized in the top lane, at least for now. Genji, looks like he's dueling in the bot lane.
He's dueling in the bottom half of the map. Big E can't swift strike in any direction. I really like that Groundbreaker from King Caffeine. That was very well done. Dragon Blade used to try and bind distance into the fray.
Oh, wow.
The arrow not able to land, and actually, somehow, Genji hacks his way out of there.
That was lucky. Zuna was sitting on about 17, probably would have obtained a few more gems, so he would have had about 20, 23 potentially there, which would put Simplicity in range of that another turn-in. But now it's Gale Force who has the opportunity to get the turn into 16 here. Prismat doing his job to make sure I'm poked for now. Is again, those 46 that were turned in earlier, definitely a good margin to make sure that you don't risk a whole lot here going forward if you do take a team fight, but also now extremely close to getting that Web Weaver phase.
Prismat, luckily, will be able to drop off 20 on the top half here. Buy a bit of time. Also, with the 16 spike coming online, this is something we've seen from quite a few Blazes, especially into the Jainas. But with that 16, having the Juggernaut plating, the opportunity to gain 50% spell armor. He has gotten every welly, has gone on to Blaze from beginning to end of this game. And it's, you know, not going to be as threatening. Jaina throwing Icy Veins into a 50% damage reduction is a pretty valued trade for Blaze.
We can see Gale Force recognizing that Simplicity going down to finish that siege camp. Prismat can only delay for so long. He's trying to light up the oil. There's going to be a lot going in here. There's going to be the Cocoon onto the Garage. That's going to be popped already, but followed up there by the Wolf coming in for the root. The
biggest thing there was the Dragon's Arrow. If that Dragon's Arrow did not connect, that's a Web Weaver phase of Gale Force Esports. They a double turn in on top of one another, but the splash did not actually get the double interrupt on both and only hit the one, but it was enough to make sure that that's no Web Weaver phase.
You can see Simplicity now only 4 gems away. They've had the lanes pushed out now. Gale Force again rotating down to the bottom. I don't know if they're going to make it down there in time for this interrupt. You can see Prismat, he's coming down trying to get it. I think he managed to get it, but he might have overcommitted. No bunker there, Dreadnought, as that's going to be Blaze going down. Now King Caffeine, he's under assault. He's going to get a taunt onto multiple people, but he is eating so much damage. In comes the Sundering, down goes King Caffeine.
And in the top lane, Zuna actually turning in the gems.
That's not...
This is one of those moments where I go, I actually can understand this one. This is one of those like, all right, we just lost 2 people. If we give up the next Web Weaver phase, which you would have, you're going to lose a lot. So you go, okay, wait. We're winning this game-ish right now. Hit the pause button, turn this in, let them get a free clear, and then we'll take that next fight. Our next fight will be our game ending. But if you lose Zuna in the mid lane, you lose so much more in this game. Another 30 seconds there after that pick.
These critical moments, twice now, Zuna's been caught out, once in the top lane during the Web Weaver phase, here again. And it does buy you time and saves you a little bit of space, but I feel like it's stopping the bleeding now for Simplicity. They've dropped off essentially all of their gems. They're actually holding on to 0 currently, unless they pick up a few in this moment. But now their win condition, Dreadnought, for a long period of time is team fighting. That is their only win condition.
And normally, well, and for anybody wondering why I was so, you know, kind of concerned with that pick on Zuna, obviously losing a member at the late game, that's concerning, but it's right here, is once that Web Weaver phase ends, even if this boss wasn't started, who's going to stop the turn-in? No one, because Simplicity does not have a full 5-on-5. They've been having a hard time doing that when they do have a 5-on-5, let alone not having the Zuna. So not only does it give a major objective there on the top half of the map towards that boss, it's going to be a Web Weaver to kind of be behind it, and the only thing Simplicity has been able to do in the downtime is get that night camp and get a little bit of pressure on bottom. Granted, that was about perfect response on the side of Simplicity. It's as much damage control as they can have. It's just, is that damage too much?
Right now, the boss going to be responded to. The one thing that Simplicity did so well is to push out that mid and bot lane. It buys a lot of times, and they also have the night camp here, which will be able to defend. I mean, Gale Force is sitting on a lot of gems, so even after this finishes, you know, this top keep now under pressure. Level 20 is going to be here, so Gale Force, as long as they don't die, right? I mean, their only thing right now is to get a little bit of structure pressure, open up potential win conditions, and it starts with this top keep. Get level 20 off of it, and then get another turn in and look to end. So Simplicity in a really rough spot right now.
Keep now going to be the focus. Do they dive past? Calf not looking to pull the trigger yet, and with the boss being cleared up, Web Weaver being dealt with pretty well here. Salvo even going down to zone off. Keep's going to stand.
They were so threatened by Simplicity potentially coming in for that fight that they did not even get that keep down. That keep sits at about 25% Dread. All of a sudden, the next Web Weaver phase all of a sudden looks to potentially go through that and to the core. Sitting at about 50-60% where it's at now makes that much more difficult.
They might get initiated on, too, if they kind of poke and prod around here long enough. The poke war.
Oh, K1 just missed that combo onto Michael Udall.
Groundbreaker thrown out. Bottom Web Weaver not going to be dealt with quite yet. Blaze has shown himself, so Gale Force know they have the upper hand for now. Welly goes down. Gonna auto attack on the King Caffeine. Hit a root, lurking arm drop. So much damage onto Zuna as the CC is there with the Sundering, and they have the damage. Zuna is out of here, and now Gale Force Esports focused onto Prismaticism, trying to find his way out. Ends up using the bunker, but likely going to get big impact. Another reset. Nice massive shove, but Figgy says not today. He gets another. Now we'll see Gale Force Esports probably go for core.
Yeah, things are going from bad to worse here for Simplicity. Again, they do have enough for another turn in. Does Gale Force, but they might just try and end it right now. No Phoenix, no Blaze. They're going forward. They get the stun. They get the follow-up, and that's going to be King Caffeine following. Now with 3 members down, Gale Force looking to end the game as the shield's going down. Biggie's still being a threat. This should be enough for Gale Force as the core is starting to fall.
Gale Force Esports here on what is a bit more of kind of home turf on Tomb of the Spider Queen. Able to hold their own through this game. and more importantly, able to hold their own against Simplicity and take a lead in the series now 2-1. Now 1 game away from furthering themselves through our playoffs, through the ladder system, and maybe finding themselves up against the next opponent kind of awaiting Team Freedom.
I mean, Team Freedom's got to be taking a good look at this, and well, you know, this Gale Force team, they're not looking too bad, but Simplicity's holding their own as well. So, you know, there is a lot of potential, I think, for both teams here going up against Team Freedom that, you know, it's no easy go of it. You know, when in North America at any given moment, it's like any given Sunday at this point, although we got it on Friday, any team can show up at any time here in North America and take down anybody. I think that's kind of the threat. That's what makes our playoff system, the ladder system, so, you know, kind of outstanding, that we get this type of competition from the very beginning to the very end. Because even if one of these teams starts to win out and then stumbles against, like, say,